Picture this. It's just past midnight, August 22nd, 2025. The world is asleep, but high above the Pacific Ocean, a U.S. Navy P-8A Poseidon aircraft is on a routine patrol. The night is pitch black. The sea a vast, empty canvas. The aircraft is sweeping the area 170 nautical miles west of Panama, a region known more for its quiet shipping lanes than for any major activity. Suddenly, the crew's calm is shattered. An alert flashes across their screens, a massive, unexpected heat signature, unlike anything they've ever seen in these waters. Something huge is out there, lurking in the darkness. As the Poseidon circles, its advanced sensors begin to piece together the puzzle. The heat source is coming from a vessel, but it's no ordinary ship. It's a behemoth, measuring nearly 350 feet long. It's not registered on any maritime database, and it isn't broadcasting any identification signals. It's a ghost ship, but as the crew gathers more data, they realize this is something far more sinister. On the hull, barely visible, is a name that sends a chill down their spines. Santa Muerte, the Holy Death. This wasn't just a ship. It was a floating fortress of crime. The intelligence that followed would shock the world. The Santa Muerte was a purpose-built, covert floating complex. A self-contained city dedicated to large-scale illegal operations. Its design was a masterpiece of criminal engineering. Inside its 320-foot hull, hidden from any casual observer, were several state-of-the-art laboratories. These weren't small-time operations. We're talking about facilities capable of mass production, complete with multiple industrial-grade reactors. This ship was a factory on the high seas, operating completely off the grid, far from the prying eyes of any government or law enforcement agency. And what was it producing? The cargo holds told a grim story. They were packed to the brim with high-value contraband. The initial estimates were staggering, valuing the contents at over $12 billion. This single vessel held more illicit wealth than the entire GDP of some small countries. It was a logistical marvel of the criminal underworld, a one-stop shop for production, storage, and eventual distribution, all consolidated into a single, mobile platform that could vanish into the vastness of the ocean at a moment's notice. The Santa Muerte represented a new, terrifying evolution in organized crime. But the most horrifying discovery was yet to come. The Santa Muerte wasn't just a factory. It was a prison. These weren't criminals. They were victims, kidnapped and forced into labor. They came from 17 different countries. A tragic, unwilling United Nations of the oppressed. They were being forced to work under the most extreme and brutal conditions imaginable, fueling this multi-billion-dollar criminal enterprise with their sweat and their lives. The heat signature the Poseidon detected wasn't just from the reactors. It was the heat of human suffering. Among these 300 souls were 80 Americans. Their stories were heartbreakingly ordinary, which made their situation all the more terrifying. There were fishermen, lured by the promise of a big catch, only to be captured and enslaved. There was a retired firefighter, a man who had spent his life saving others, now a captive himself. There was even a young, brilliant engineer, whose skills were being twisted and exploited to maintain the very machinery that kept him imprisoned. Each person had a name, a family, a life that had been stolen from them. They were trapped in a floating hell, thousands of miles from home, with no hope of escape. The discovery of the Santa Muerte triggered a massive, top-secret international operation. This wasn't just a drug bust. It was a hostage rescue and a complex military takedown all in one. The stakes were impossibly high. Any wrong move could result in the captors destroying the ship, the evidence, and everyone on board. The world's most elite special forces units began planning a raid, studying the ship's schematics, and preparing for a confrontation with a ruthless, well-armed criminal organization. The operation had to be perfect, a synchronized strike to neutralize the threat and save the 300 innocent lives hanging in the balance. As dawn broke on August 23rd, the plan was set in motion. Under the cover of a manufactured tropical storm, helicopters and stealth boats converged on the Santa Muerte's position. The assault was swift and overwhelming. Commandos stormed the vessel from the air and sea, moving through the labyrinthine corridors of the ship. They faced resistance, but the highly trained operators systematically neutralized the guards, securing the laboratories and control rooms. Their primary objective was the lower decks, where the hostages were held. The moment they broke through the reinforced doors and announced they were there to rescue them was a moment of pure, unadulterated relief and emotion. Freeing the captives was a complex and delicate process. Many were weak, malnourished, and terrified. Medical teams were on standby, providing immediate care as the former prisoners were airlifted to safety. The young engineer, using his intimate knowledge of the ship, was instrumental in helping the special forces navigate the vessel and disable its systems, preventing any attempts at the retired firefighter, despite his own ordeal, helped organize and calm his fellow captives, his old instincts kicking in. The fishermen, finally free, looked at the open sea not as a prison, but as a path back to the lives they thought they had lost forever. The aftermath of the Santa Muerte raid was a global media firestorm. The scale of the operation was unlike anything the public had ever seen. The $12 billion figure was headline news. But it was the human stories that truly captured the world's attention. The 80 Americans and the 220 others were reunited with their families in tearful, emotional scenes broadcast around the globe. Their testimonies painted a harrowing picture of life aboard the Holy Death, but also of the resilience of the human spirit. They had survived the unthinkable. Governments from 17 nations worked together to provide support and counseling for the survivors, helping them begin the long road to recovery. The investigation into the organization behind the Santa Muerte delved deep into the shadows of the global criminal network. This was a syndicate with immense resources, technological sophistication, and a complete disregard for human life. The ship itself was a treasure trove of intelligence. The data recovered from its computers and the testimony of the crew and captives began to unravel a conspiracy that reached the highest levels of a hidden, powerful cartel. The Santa Muerte wasn't an isolated venture. It was the flagship of a new kind of transnational criminal empire. The fight wasn't over. It had just entered a new, more dangerous phase. The world had won a major battle, but the war against this shadowy organization was only just beginning. The legacy of the Santa Muerte would serve as a chilling reminder of the darkness that can hide in plain sight, even in the middle of the ocean. Thanks for watching, everyone. If you found this story as compelling as I did, make sure to hit that like button and subscribe for more deep dives into incredible events. See you next time.
Imagine a ghost ship, a phantom of the Pacific, over 300 feet of rust and terror. For years, she haunted the shipping lanes, a shadow that swallowed vessels whole. They called her the Santa Muerte, but this was no ordinary pirate ship. Hidden deep within her steel belly were 2 stolen nuclear reactors, an arsenal of black market weapons, and a dark secret: 300 innocent civilians enslaved, forced to serve the world's most wanted ocean criminal. For years, governments tracked her, but she was always one step ahead, disappearing into the vastness of the ocean like a myth. Intelligence agencies from a dozen countries tried to corner her, but her network was too deep, her defenses too sophisticated. Every attempt failed. The Santa Muerte seemed untouchable, a floating fortress of despair. But on the night of August 22, 2025, the myth was about to die. The United States Navy had finally locked on after months of painstaking intelligence gathering, satellite surveillance, and decrypted communications. They had her. A plan was set in motion, an operation so audacious, so complex, it would rewrite the rules of modern naval warfare. It was codenamed Operation Iron Tide. This wasn't going to be a long, drawn-out siege. The goal was surgical precision, a takedown so fast, so silent, the enemy wouldn't know what hit them until it was already over. The lives of 300 hostages hung in the balance. One mistake, one stray shot, could trigger the reactors, turning a rescue mission into a catastrophic disaster. The pressure was immense. The clock struck to 16 a.m. The dark, moonless Pacific was calm. Below the surface, the first phase of Iron Tide began. A swarm of autonomous underwater drones, the Navy's silent hunters, closed in on the Santa Muerte. They weren't armed with explosives, but with something far more strategic: advanced electronic warfare packages. In a coordinated pulse, they unleashed a wave of electromagnetic interference, jamming every signal coming from or going to the ship. Radar, satellite communications, short-range radio, everything went dead. On the bridge of the Santa Muerte, screens flickered and died. The ship, once a hyper-connected fortress, was suddenly blind, deaf, and alone in the dark. The time was 2:23 a.m. The trap was set 7 minutes. That's all the time the drones needed to create total electronic isolation. And in that silence, the true force of Operation Iron Tide revealed itself. From the depths, 12 Virginia-class attack submarines broke the surface, their sleek, black hulls emerging like leviathans from the abyss. They formed a perfect, inescapable ring around the ghost ship. Hatches hissed open, and in the darkness, figures began to move with practiced speed. 480 Special Operations Soldiers Navy SEALs, the best of the best, poured out, their inflatable boats hitting the water without a sound. Guided by night vision and a shared encrypted network impervious to the jamming, they raced toward the Santa Muerte, closing the distance in mere moments. They were a tide of silent warriors, about to crash upon the shores of a floating hell. The assault was a masterclass in coordinated chaos. Teams of SEALs scaled the hull using magnetic grappling lines, moving with a speed and silence that defied belief. Within 2 minutes, the first teams were on deck. Their objectives were clear and executed in parallel. Team Alpha stormed the bridge. Before the skeleton crew could even raise an alarm, they were neutralized. The ship's helm was secured. Simultaneously, Team Bravo, the explosives and demolitions experts, moved through the ship's corridors, their real-time schematics glowing on their wrist displays. They knew the location of every booby trap, every pressure plate, every infrared laser. They disarmed them one by one, clearing a safe path for the other teams. The pirates thought their defenses were foolproof. They never planned for an enemy who knew their ship better than they did. While the ship's defenses were being dismantled, Teams Charlie and Delta descended into the engine rooms, the heart of the beast. Their target, the 2 stolen nuclear reactors. This was the most delicate part of the entire operation. Guided by nuclear engineers who were monitoring their every move from a command sub, the SEALs bypassed the makeshift security and initiated the emergency shutdown sequence. The hum of the powerful engines began to die down. The lights flickered, and the Santa Muerte, a vessel of immense power just minutes before, started to drift, powerless. The entire reactor shutdown was completed in under 4 minutes. The catastrophic threat of a meltdown was averted. The ship was now just a floating steel coffin. With the ship crippled and its command structure shattered, the final and most important phase began. The rescue. Team Foxtrot, the hostage rescue specialists, reached the heavily guarded cargo holds where the 300 civilians were being kept. They moved with a blend of overwhelming force and profound care. Flashbangs disoriented the guards, and in seconds, the captives were being guided out, shielded by the very soldiers who had just descended from the darkness. The fear on the hostages' faces quickly turned to shock, then relief. They had been living a nightmare, and now, angels in combat gear were leading them toward the dawn. As they were escorted to the waiting boats, the leader of this criminal empire, the world's most wanted ocean criminal, was cornered and captured without a single shot fired in his direction. His reign of terror was over. The entire operation, from the initial jamming pulse to the final hostage being freed, took less than 10 minutes. It was the fastest, most successful maritime takedown in modern history. As the sun began to rise, it illuminated an incredible scene. The Santa Muerte, the ghost ship that had terrorized the Pacific, was now silent and powerless, completely surrounded by the might of the U.S. Navy. And on the decks of the surrounding submarines, 300 civilians took their first breaths of fresh air as free people. They were safe. Every single one of them. Not one hostage was lost. Not one casualty among the rescued. Operation Iron Tide was more than just a military victory. It was a statement. It proved to the world that no shadow is too dark, no fortress too remote. When America decides to strike at sea, it strikes with overwhelming precision, unwavering purpose, and a silence that is more powerful than any explosion. Thanks for watching. If you enjoyed this story of modern military prowess, make sure to like, subscribe, and hit the bell for more.